The hidden advantage late bloomers hold over everyone else. Napoleon Hill. What if everything you've been taught about timing is wrong? What if being late isn't a weakness but a hidden advantage? We live in a society obsessed with early achievement. We glorify the 20-year-old millionaire, the teenage prodigy, the overnight sensation. But here's the paradox. The most powerful transformations in life rarely happen fast. But they happen slowly, quietly, deep underground where no one is watching. And that's where late bloomers live. While the world races ahead, they are building something deeper, something no storm can shake. And when they finally rise, they don't just make noise, they shift the ground itself. Napoleon Hill, the iconic mind behind Think and Grow Rich, once said that success often comes just after the point when most people give up. But what he didn't say explicitly yet hinted at throughout his work is that the timing of your success is not random. It's earned through inner preparation, through what he called definiteness of purpose. And that purpose, it often takes years, sometimes decades to clarify. That's why late bloomers have an edge. They've spent more time in the fire, more time questioning, refining, observing, failing and thinking. And thought, deep, unfiltered thought, is power. In a world addicted to speed, late bloomers are the rare few who have learned how to wait well. And that is a lost art.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Have you ever felt behind in life? Like everyone else is sprinting ahead while you're stuck figuring out your next move? That feeling isn't failure, it's friction. And friction creates depth. It forces you to ask questions others avoid. What do I really want? What am I willing to sacrifice for it? Who am I when no one is watching? These aren't the questions of someone falling behind. These are the questions of someone building a foundation. And the deeper the foundation, the higher the rise. Let's get brutally honest, early success can be dangerous, but it can inflate the ego before the soul is ready. It can distract from the inner work that sustains real achievement. How many child stars, young entrepreneurs, or viral sensations have we seen crash because their identity was built on performance rather than substance? Late bloomers don't have that problem. They've already lost. They've already failed. They've already been humbled. And that humility becomes their compass. It grounds them. It teaches them to lead from wisdom, not just ambition. But the world doesn't tell you this. The world keeps asking, what have you done by now? It doesn't ask, what are you becoming? It doesn't ask, what truths have you discovered in silence? And that's why so many people give up before their moment, because they confuse delayed growth with denied potential. But potential is never denied. It's only delayed when it needs more time to mature. Like fruit that ripens late in the season, it may take longer, but when it's ready, it's sweeter, richer, more nourishing than anything that came before it. So let me ask you something deeply personal. What are you rushing for? Who told you that you're late? Who decided the timeline you're now enslaved to? And what if that timeline was never real? What if your journey was always meant to take longer because what you're here to create isn't just for you, but for others who will need your exact experience, your exact voice, your exact wisdom? Napoleon Hill believed that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Late blooming is often the result of adversity, financial struggle, self-doubt, rejection, failure. But that adversity, it doesn't delay your destiny, it shapes it. Every setback becomes a chisel. Every delay becomes a sharpening. And when the moment finally arrives, and it will arrive, you step into it, not just with talent, but with truth. And truth is what the world is starving for. Not more noise, not more speed, but depth, authenticity, soul. And here's the wild part. Late bloomers often outlast early risers because they've learned how to keep going without applause. They've learned how to pursue vision without validation. That's a level of mental strength that can't be faked. It's forged in silence, in isolation, in nights of doubt and mornings of relentless self-talk. And when that internal furnace is fully lit, it doesn't flicker, it roars. Quietly at first, then explosively. So instead of asking, why am I not there yet? Ask, what am I becoming right now that no one can see? Instead of measuring your life in milestones, measure it in wisdom gained, in false identities shed, in moments when you could have quit but didn't. That's your unseen resume. That's your hidden advantage. And one day, when the world finally turns to notice, they won't see a late bloomer. They'll see a force. And the philosophy of ripening, why life doesn't reward the fast, but the ready in nature. Nothing blossoms before its time. And the fruit ripens when it's ready, not when the world demands it. And yet, we humans rush ourselves through life as though speed were a virtue and pressure a compass. We confuse urgency with purpose, forgetting that greatness is never rushed, it is ripened. That's the core truth late bloomers understand, whether they realize it consciously or not. The universe doesn't reward the first to arrive. It rewards those who are prepared when their moment comes. And preparation, true preparation, takes longer than we like to admit. This is where philosophy meets practicality. If you study the writings of thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Soren Kierkegaard, or even Napoleon Hill, a common thread emerges: the individual must be formed, not just informed. Formed through experience, through reflection, through hardship. Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." That's the paradox late bloomers live inside. They collect fragments of insight from every delay, every detour, every disappointment. They don't always know why the wait is happening, but in hindsight, they see it was essential. Because if the breakthrough had come too early, they wouldn't have been able to hold it. Think about this: how many people get what they think they want, only to collapse under the weight of it? How many achieve success, but lose themselves in the process? That's what happens when the fruit is picked before it's ripe. It looks good on the outside, but inside it's bitter, unfinished, unready. Late bloomers, on the other hand, often arrive with both strength and softness. They've been seasoned not just by time, but by timelessness, by the long, quiet hours spent asking, is this really who I am? And what am I here to do? They've learned to endure the discomfort of not knowing, and that endurance becomes their armor. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the pressure to make it by a certain age? To prove yourself on someone else's timeline? Where did that pressure even come from? Was it a teacher, a parent, a social feed, a cultural myth? And more importantly, what did that pressure cost you? Did it rush you into jobs you didn't love, relationships that weren't aligned, decisions that didn't reflect who you truly are? That's the cost of speed without direction. It feels like progress, but it's often just motion without meaning. Late bloomers are different. They move slower not because they're lazy or lost, but because they're listening to their intuition, to their inner voice, to the rhythm of their own becoming. And in that listening, they begin to cultivate one of the rarest traits in the modern world: discernment. The ability to separate noise from signal, urgency from importance, imitation from authenticity. That discernment, born from the long path, becomes a superpower, one that early success rarely teaches. But there's a reason why some of the most impactful creators, leaders, and thinkers didn't find their voice until later in life. Oprah was fired from her first job in television. Vera Wang didn't design her first dress until 40. Colonel Sanders didn't franchise KFC until 65. Napoleon Hill himself spent 25 years studying successful people before publishing Think and Grow Rich. Why? Because what they were building required depth, and depth takes time. You cannot microwave wisdom. But this is the great philosophical inversion. It's not that late bloomers are slow, it's that the world is often too impatient to wait for something real. And when you bloom late, you bloom fully. Because you've had time to shed illusions, to test your values, to align your ambitions with your essence. You're not chasing validation, you're chasing truth. And truth, once found, doesn't need to scream. It simply is. So don't fear the years where nothing seems to be happening. Don't rush to bloom just because others have. The seasons are not in competition, and your time when it comes will not be late. It will be right. Life doesn't reward the fast. It rewards the ready. And readiness is not a date on a calendar. It's a state of being. A moment of convergence where who you are finally meets what the world needs. And when that moment arrives, you won't have to force it. You'll simply step into it. The sacred season of obscurity, why being overlooked, is one of life's greatest gifts. There is a quiet season in every late bloomer's life that almost no one talks about. It's not glamorous. It doesn't make for great Instagram posts. It's not the grind season that hustle culture celebrates. This season is deeper than that. It's the season of obscurity when no one is watching, no one is clapping, and no one seems to care. And yet, it is in this overlooked space that some of the most profound transformations take place. Because when the spotlight is off, the ego goes silent. And when the ego finally stops performing, the soul begins to speak. Obscurity is misunderstood. We see it as a punishment, as a sign that we're falling behind. But what if it's actually divine protection? What if being unseen is not the absence of success, but the preparation for it? In obscurity, you are free to fail without judgment, free to experiment without expectation, free to go deep rather than wide. But in that sacred silence, you can ask yourself the questions that fame drowns out. What do I believe in when no one is applauding me? What kind of life am I building when no one is validating my steps? These questions don't just shape your path, they shape you. We often think of obscurity as a passive state, but it's intensely active internally. It's a time of spiritual weightlifting. You're developing muscles no one can see: resilience, discernment, clarity, patience. And those muscles will be essential when your season shifts and the world finally pays attention. Because attention is a test, not a reward. If you haven't done the inner work during obscurity, attention will devour you. It will twist you into whatever shape the crowd wants. But if you've bloomed in the dark, you'll carry a quiet strength into the light. You won't need the approval. You'll already be whole. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. What do you do when no one is watching? Do you still show up with excellence? Do you still create, study, train, think, reflect? Or do you wait for an audience to validate your effort? That's the real test, not whether you can perform under pressure, but whether you can persist in silence. Because if you can be faithful in obscurity, you've already proven that your purpose is stronger than your pride. You've shown the universe and yourself that you're not just chasing applause. You're chasing alignment. Napoleon Hill spoke often about the invisible council, a group of imaginary advisors he consulted with during his meditations. These weren't real people. They were symbolic archetypes: Einstein, Edison, Lincoln. But what Hill was really doing was going inward. He was using the quiet to think deeply, to imagine boldly, to prepare mentally. That's what obscurity gives you: uninterrupted space to commune with your higher self, to hear the whispers of ideas not yet ripe for the world. And in that quiet communion, you begin to trust yourself in a way that no external success can replicate. Ironically, the longer you stay in obscurity, the more powerful your emergence becomes, because you've had time to refine, to sharpen your voice, to deepen your vision. You're not just another echo in the digital noise. You're a signal, a frequency that cuts through the chaos because it was born in silence. Think of every powerful voice you admire, whether in philosophy, art, business, or activism. Almost all of them spent years in the shadows before they were ever recognized. And that shadow wasn't wasted time. It was womb time. A space of gestation, of formation, of becoming. So if you find yourself in obscurity right now, don't rush to escape it. Don't waste energy trying to be seen. Instead, ask, what am I being prepared for? What qualities is life trying to build in me that require silence, solitude, and slowness? Because the truth is, when the spotlight finally hits you, it won't create you, it will only reveal you. And who you are in that moment will depend entirely on who you became when the world wasn't watching. In that sense, obscurity isn't a detour. It's the initiation, from seed to signal. Why the late bloomer changes the game forever. There's a quiet revolution that happens every time a late bloomer steps fully into their moment. It's not loud like a viral trend or flashy like a sudden rise to fame. It's deeper, more permanent, like the turning of a tide. Because when someone who has spent years in the shadows, years refining, failing, learning, and listening finally shows up fully formed, they don't just succeed, they redefine the game. They shift it. They become a signal in a world flooded with noise. And that signal is unmistakable because it carries weight. It carries truth. It carries everything they lived through while everyone else was racing ahead. Late bloomers don't just arrive, they emerge. And when they do, they bring with them a kind of authority that can't be faked or fast-tracked. It's not the authority of status or position, but of embodiment. You can feel it in their presence. You can hear it in their words. You can see it in their work. It's the authority of someone who didn't just read the map, they walked every mile of the terrain. And because of that, they don't just offer answers, they offer understanding. They don't just inspire, they resonate. What makes a late bloomer so powerful is that they've had time to become, not just to do, but to be, to wrestle with identity, to sit with doubt, to strip away the layers of expectation until all that's left is something pure, unshakable. And that purity becomes their gift to the world. It's not a product they sell. It's not a brand they build, but it's who they are. And that authenticity, hard-earned and deeply rooted, becomes a mirror for others. It gives permission. It says, you're not late. You're just becoming. Let me ask you this. What kind of impact could you have if you stopped trying to catch up and started showing up as you are, right now, scars and all? What would change if you stopped measuring your worth by how far you've come and started measuring it by how deeply you've grown? Because that's the truth of every powerful late bloomer. They didn't arrive with momentum. They arrived with meaning. And meaning, once embodied, is infinitely more valuable than momentum. You can't lose it. You can't fake it. And you can't be replaced when you carry it. Napoleon Hill understood this deeply. His work wasn't just about getting rich, it was about becoming someone who could handle wealth, success, power. He taught that the mind, once trained with definiteness of purpose, becomes a magnet for the right opportunities. But that training, it takes time, it takes failure, it takes solitude. And late bloomers have done the work. They've trained in the dark. And when they finally bloom, it's not with desperation, it's with direction. And here's the ultimate twist. Late bloomers often have the greatest staying power. Because they didn't rise on hype, they rose on substance. They didn't grow fast, they grew deep. And deep roots don't just survive storms, they thrive in them. When trends fade and shallow success collapses, the late bloomer continues. Not because they're trying to stay relevant, but because they are relevant. Their very existence challenges the cultural obsession with speed, youth, and immediacy. They become proof that time taken is not time wasted, it is time invested. So if you've ever felt behind, overlooked, underestimated, remember this: you are not a mistake. You are a seed. And seeds take time. They grow in silence. They break through in seasons. And when they do, they don't just take up space, they change the landscape. You were never late, you were preparing. And when you finally rise, you won't just participate in the world. You'll redefine it.